Well, Jack Anthony, this is one of the goals of the week. He's been a revelation for the Magpies. It's a beautiful shot for goal, and I guess he's sort of number 3 and number 4 in the pecking order before the start of the season, but he's really come up and making his mark for the Collingwood Football Club. Mick Malthouse, the coach of the Magpies, joins us. Mick, welcome.
Thank you very much.
26 years as coach. That's an amazing achievement. How long do you want to go on? Can you coach into your 60s?
Well, you can't determine that because you may well want to coach. And
do you, though?
Well, how do you know after... I mean, ask any coach after his first, second, third and fourth year. Probably the young kids like that say, or the young fellas like that say, yeah, they do. As you get older, you can't choose, one, because the board may not elect to put you on, and two is if your performances aren't good enough, well, it's, you know, in this game it's pretty it's cutthroat. And three is you've got to have that passion. I've certainly got it now, and I don't anticipate because you're in your 50s that it suddenly drops off. It's like most of our world leaders, coaches overseas in other sports, what mysteriously in AFL, what we get to 50s, in the 50s, and all of a sudden we're going backwards. We're senile and don't know about the game. I think we know probably more about the game now than we ever have.
Do you harbour any ambition to perhaps do something else professionally in your working?
Not really.
Not really? No.
I mean, I would love to be involved in other things that are not that I don't have the qualifications for. So I'm not going to kid myself, but you'd love to be involved in other things. What's around the corner? Who knows what's around the corner?
Mick, 2 years ago, you were the 4th oldest coach, and then Sheedy and Pagan and Matthews have gone. Now you're the oldest. As long as your energy's there, fine. How do you keep yourself relevant? Do you have to work at being able to be in touch or even in front of what's happening at the moment? So are you particularly out there getting ideas from other games, from other coaches, so that you can be ahead of the game?
Well, I don't think I'm any less behind or ahead of the game than any other coach, Robert. I don't think just because you go from... I was the youngest coach for 8 years. Did it make me any better? No, certainly didn't, because I was inexperienced. When I turned 38, I think someone else come in then at 36, 37. So for 8 years, coached Footscray for 6 and West Coast for 2. I don't think I'm doing anything basically different outside of adjusting to the game, trying to introduce new things or learning from other sports, learning from within. That's dangerous because the game sometimes can fall in on itself. I don't do any less work, but I do a lot more work with my deputies, which encourages them to be proactive. And you know, the thing is, and I've said this before, and it's not trying to be a smart remark, but being in the game for the changes that have happened in the last 20 odd years, I'm already part of it, so I understand it. And I think that people that fall outside there, that aren't in there, tend to look in and think they know it, but really, unless you're in the oven itself, when this is all happening around you, and the game has changed considerably in the last 3 seasons compared to probably a gap of about 5 years, and it changed back in the I reckon that we put a hold on sides like no other sides. I remember David Parkin, this is weird, West Coast, David Parkin saying, well, you think the West Coast are tight, watch for us. And they won a premiership in 95. So we all become this defensive side. And then it adjusted again. And I regularly asked, and I think you might have asked the question once before too, are you going to hand pass more? Well, the answer is, if I hand pass more because Hawthorn hand pass more, or Geelong pass more, I've got to also consider how Sydney played and won their premiership 5 years ago, how West Coast won it 4 years ago, how Port won it whenever year they won it. It might have been 4 or 5 years ago. If we continue to change the methodology, you end up falling in on yourself to the point where players don't understand the game. So the best part of our game is to be strong enough to hold the values that you think are the best for your football team. If you think that you need to adjust, which everyone has to every year, marginally sometimes, a lot, maybe other times, you may then go forward. But what you don't want to do is to teach one method 1 year because it's the hot topic, then change it the next year because someone else won a premiership.
For the sake of change.
Last 5 years have been 5 different premiers. There's one constant, which we all forget about. No matter how good you are, and how good the full forward is and how good the fullback is. The one constant from 2000 and probably certainly well before that, dominant midfield.
Mick,
Dominant midfield.
in the pre-season we saw you hand over the reins to your assistants in the NAB Cup. Do you think it's important to do an apprenticeship, or do you think you can go straight into the job like Michael Voss has this year?
Well, here's me saying that, but I went straight from playing to coaching. In those days, you probably get away with it.
Yeah.
Michael has had 1 or 2 years out, looking from outside in. I would say, and I'm not about to discuss Michael Voss or Brisbane, but I think the ideal situation would be to have served an apprenticeship where you're able to learn under someone, take a division, work within that division, and I say also change divisions, because what we seem to do as an offensive line or a defensive line or a midfield line, we specialise.
Yeah, so mix it up.
Yeah.
What I like to give my coaches is a variety. So over a period of time, they actually be mid and back and an opposition coach even.
Yeah.
And it gives them a greater insight into the mechanics of coaching.
I guess Michael was going to go to West Coast. I guess circumstances in the end changed it.
Yeah. 2 champions that you coached, Scott Burns and Nathan Buckley. Do you see them as being senior coaches?
Yeah, I do. Yep.
Yeah, it just
They should be. You know, we've seen great players in the past, Robert, not necessarily become good coaches. And great coaches are such a rarity, because great coaches generally have great sides. Let's face it. You can be one of the greatest coaches of all time was Len Smith, and his brother Norm Smith coached a wonderful side. Len Smith gave him the information. Well, they both discussed it, but Len Smith had the ideas. Didn't have a great side, but Norm took a lot of that from him and got Melbourne going. And we all say Norm Smith was a great coach, and he was a great coach, but a great side.
Your forward set up, Mick, at the moment. I mean, obviously Rusling again has unfortunately been injured. Rocker's been injured. Particularly early in the game, you got outmarked a bit. Do you need a bit more, maybe Rocker straighten things up a bit?
I would say I was very impressed in Melbourne. I know we beat them comfortably at the end of this sort of stuff. Their ability to mark on our forward line, the general rule is be cautious. You know, maybe a young bloke like that spoil and sort of stuff. I thought when he slaughtered Travis, the first 3 kicks that went in there, he had perfect position for the ball to be delivered properly to him. Richo, you'd understand this more than anyone, and Robert, you as a centre half forward, you make the play, you make the spot, and the ball's kicked slightly in favour of the backline player. You've already made, your momentum's pushed one side, the ball is now out here, you're outmarked. So I would say Travis didn't get justice for, and the efforts to get the ball in there were good, but the execution was probably a metre wrong.
And that makes all the difference.
It made a massive difference, and they were very good. But their marking, I was particularly impressed in their marking.
How far off is Rocker? We got some vision of him the weekend. He still looks like he's got a bit of work to do aerobically, shall we say?
Well, I don't know whether Anthony's ever going to be a stall gift winner or a marathon runner, but he really does put a massive... You see here, he's double up and he's triple up and this sort of stuff. He does put an enormous amount of pressure on the opposition, and he will attract one of the better players. Put a mug on him, Anthony's going to kick 10 goals, so I'll give you the 10. Yeah. So good players have to play on him, and he does release. That means then our other forwards may not get the best, but if Anthony gets the second...
That's what I'm saying. If he comes all of a sudden the 3rd and 4th string, away he goes.
He's not far off.
Your record against the Cats in recent times has been outstanding. You must be looking forward.
I don't know what it is, quite frankly.
Pretty good.
I really don't know what it is.
Better than anybody's.
Is it? Yeah, well, I don't know. That's sometimes...
They've beaten you narrowly by a couple of times, and 2 huge thumpings, which have become very famous victories.
Yeah, well, I wouldn't... Yeah, we don't get too caught up in too far down the track. I'm a great believer in history, but I think in these sort of instances, you go back 1 year and you have a look at what took place.
Your blueprint in recent times has worked, though, hasn't it?
Yeah, well, I've got to be... as I said to the matchman today, the young coaches today, let's be very cautious about last year. Everyone got wrapped up and said, oh, it was fantastic and do this. Yeah, it was a great win. But, look, I don't know. Maybe the planets were all aligned and maybe they weren't for Geelong. But you've got to be very cautious about those sort of wins and look at what you've got in front of you, how many changes and styles and so forth.
Mick, we were talking about the new rule changes just before. Is it frustrating when you're trying to teach players and every year there's different rules coming in and interpretations?
Well, is it frustrating? I think some of the rules that have come in have been outstanding, quite frankly. The centre bounce one with the line across the middle and that 10-metre thing, that's probably the most outstanding rule because it's going to save a lot of players.
Yeah.
The interpretation is the biggest worry.
Yeah.
And I constantly see the frustration with umpires and players that it's not interpreted right. And we are told one thing and it's just out. And we've seen instances over the weekend where a player has, particularly the one with, and I think it's developed, and I'll say this, and I might be incorrect here, and I don't want to sort of, this is not bagging anyone, but Hawthorn used a tactic last year. They grabbed the bloke so he couldn't lead on and get the next possession.
Yeah.
Now, clearly it's illegal, and they were free kick, but the penalty was probably minor because it allowed their players in to get in behind the ball.
Yeah.
So the AFL, in their wisdom, in the review panel and that sort of stuff, they looked at it and said, we need to free kick that. Now, and you know what? I don't think anyone will argue about that.
No.
But there's such a
Fine line.
well, it's black and white. What we're getting confused with is the tackle at the time and taking the bloke to the ground slightly late in the same instance.
So it's such a difficult thing
Jeff
to
Geeshan
interpret.
has told me, and my match committee, which I've relayed to the players, that is just relayed free kick from here to Robert. Now, but we're finding now some umpires say that, and then the next one goes, I'll give you 50 metres because you've actually taken him out of the game. Well, surely that's not what it was intended. So they're the ones that are frustrating.
Yeah.
I dare say with you, that would frustrate you guys as well.
Yeah,
the
well,
players.
you get the examples on the DVD and they're cut and dry, like we're saying. They're black and white, but then once the game comes around, they're interpreted differently.
You work in a very public job. How do you feel when your salaries, your estimated salaries made public, and should the players' salaries be made public? What do you think when you pick up the paper at breakfast and see the story recently about...
I was told about it. I wouldn't read that rubbish. I feel as if the shoe was on the other foot, I wonder how giving our journalists would be.
You deserve to be the highest paid coach for your years in the game.
If I am. I've got no idea what other
Well,
people
if you are, you deserve to be the highest paid coach. Who's the most favourite player that you've coached? Is there a player that stands out as someone that you really enjoyed coaching?
There's a lot, Rob.
Can you give us one or two?
Oh, yeah, I probably can. Well, I need to go more than that, and I'll go very briefly. I'd say a bloke like Andrew Purcell was outstanding at Footscray because I watched a 6'4" ruckman ruck all day against the really big blokes, and he taught me something that was great to be able to pass on to other players. He taught me preparation for body. When he came in off the game in those days, it was nothing, just get dressed and go. He would be still in there stretching and icing up, ready for next week, and he was black and blue from knee to shoulder, and he was up every week. Dougie Hawkins, of course, was terrific to coach. Next club, and that's probably an injustice to a lot of good players.
Sure, I know, it's just
club,
a couple.
Oh, well, I really loved Glenn Jakovich. I got on so well with him. He's just such a ripping bloke. Blue McKenna's just an outstanding individual, outstanding person, and I get on so well with him. It keeps going. Dean Kemp and also Collingwood. There are just so many. It's the chemistry. You've got to be cautious, and I've always taught myself to keep at arm's length from players because you've got to make professional decisions, not emotional decisions. But I get on well with Daisy. I like to have a kick with Daisy before the match. In fact, I think it's almost as much my ritual now as his ritual. But Nathan Buckley, I get on very, very well with Bucks.
We're going to take a break, Rob.
Oh, I've got a good one.
Yeah, we'll save it till after the break.
Right.
We'll take a break. Also coming up, just how are the stats compiled every week and how is your points for the Dream Team collated? We'll find out a little bit later on the show with Access All Areas. Good news for Magpie fans. Heath Shaw, no case to answer, and rightly so. So he's in the clear to play this week. And also Jonathan Brown. He's also in the clear after this little tete-a-tete with Mark Murphy. He has also been cleared. Now, Adam McPhee from Essendon, he will serve a 2-match suspension if he takes the early plea. Likewise, Daniel Motlop, he'll serve a 1-week suspension if he takes the early plea. And interesting, Brett Kirk has been charged. Rob, we were here at this game, didn't really notice it. He's going straight to the tribunal for making reckless contact with umpire Matthew James during the second quarter of Sunday's match. He's gone straight to the tribunal.
Well, they've taken a dim view on it, haven't they? Maybe if we can have another look at it. Was he pushed into the umpire by Sam Mitchell, perhaps? They'll be hoping that's the case.
Do you have trouble, Richo, with the umpires?
Well, I'm not normally in that situation, but it's normally the on-ballers when the umpire's backing out, exactly that situation.
Have a look at Sam Mitchell.
If you're going to get tagged,
Sam pushed
What do
him
you
forward.
reckon, Mick?
well, if you're going to get tagged, get the umpire between you and that's the best way to do it, is directly behind the umpire. You know he's going to come out there, and what's the tag you're going to do? Once he parts, you've lost him. So I have no. Well,
I think Brett
I don't know
Kirk's-
if I'm allowed to
No,
talk about
I think
this.
Brett
but-
Kirk's okay. Sam Mitchell might be told, behave yourself.
The Murphy one with Brown, of course, they've got history. Murphy in the Brisbane Lions, haven't they? He didn't decide in the end not to go to the Brisbane Lions, Mark Murphy. Remember that famous incident with Copeland, and when he got slung and really wrecked his shoulder for the season, didn't he?
Yeah, well, Mark Murphy could have gone to Brisbane because his father, John, was captain and a terrific player for the old Fitzroy. And I got a feeling that Brisbane, they didn't like his decision to go to the Blues. So they might make him pay a little bit there because they certainly have gone after him a bit, I think.
You want to play a radio grab, Rob? You did an interview with Adam Simpson yesterday. Then you want to follow it up with a question to Mick?
Yeah, just a question, Mick. As a senior coach, with the way the game's changed enormously, do you feel you have as much control on what's happening out on the ground as you did in the 80s and 90s as football goes today? Because I have a feeling, not that I've been in the box for a long while, but I have a feeling that the senior coach doesn't have as much influence on a game as the 80s and 90s when it was less sophisticated as it is now.
That's a very, very good question. I had great control at Footscray because I used to yell from the coach's box and have half the ground, no runners needed. And the game was basically Doug Hawkins on this wing and the rest were on the, nearabouts. But I think you have most of your say pre-match, and I'm not talking at the actual day of the match, I'm talking all week when you start to put in your tactics.
Team meetings,
The runner is used very rarely to tell a player he's done something wrong. It's more instructive and subtle changes that are happening on the ground. Be prepared for something. We make about 100 changes a week, which is a game which certainly occupies a fair bit of your time. You do entrust your players with greater responsibility to anticipate things that will happen on the ground that perhaps 20 years ago didn't happen, because we did play pretty much a straight
Predictable footy.
6, 3 and 6. That's right. But on the same token, they are representing your thoughts, and it's important that your captain and deputies on the ground, anything that we always call expect the unexpected. And if it's going to happen, this happens. Be prepared, and you run the show out there.
Adam Simpson's comments were interesting yesterday, and I remember Lee Matthews making a similar comment last year, Rob. You spoke to Simpson about do you know who you're playing on and what's going out on the ground?
This was after the game at the MCG yesterday. Now, Adam Simpson's played 15 years and almost 300 games, former captain of North Melbourne, so he's a very experienced player.
Let's listen on Adam Simpson.
You get interchanged like everybody else a lot of times during the course of a game. When you come onto the field, do you know who your direct opponent is?
No. I suppose we've got some players who we look after, and the rest of us probably take a colour, is what we call it.
Taking a colour.
I think when you're coming back onto the ground after an interchange, normally you would ask the player who you are on, or you know what position you're going on to. If I'm going onto the wing, I would find out at the next centre bounce exactly who my opponent is if I didn't know when I first ran on.
Can you just keep up with the sheer...
No, because the moment you start doing that, the moment you start telling a player that this is what he's got, he may run off.
Yeah.
No, this is the responsibility factor. That as long as you understand the position you're playing in, and there's going to be a rotation of players through there, then you're getting ready for it. If you go out there blind and don't know where you're playing, that's the thing that when we get very annoyed. Or a player runs off and mysteriously, as I said to my players, someone mysteriously runs on to replace him, and he's the one that's used on the outlet. What have you been doing? So no, we like. I think players these days are a lot more thinking about the game, if that's the terminology, because they've got to be thinking players. Otherwise, the game 20 years ago compared to today is all about that change. But rarely do we do make subtle changes on forward line, back line to accommodate, and mismatches and so forth. Because quite often, I mean, on the weekend, I think we had Travis take a mark against a 5-footer or 5'6", so it didn't make any difference. But the player must know his role, and that's the most important thing.
You also need to know the roles of other positions on the ground in case you get swung there. You know, if you get moved to the wing and you don't know where you're meant to be standing in a zone or at a stoppage, it can be crucial to the team.
Mick, you showed a lot of empathy towards Ben Cousins in the NAB Cup game. It seemed to me you went out of your way to find him, shake his hand. Have you spoken to him over the last month or two?
No, I left a message with Ben, and I think that was probably enough to do. I don't want to, make it, too heavy. I mean, he's at another football club. Well, he was one of my young players coming through at West Coast. I know the family very well. I know his friends of the family very well, and I think we all, as one, want to see Ben get out of what took place. And when I say get out of it, overcome what took place, and get back to the thing that he loves most of all in playing football. And I think this is a real kick in the backside, or a kick in the guts to him, quite frankly, and I just hope he can get over it.
It's the wake-up call. An extraordinary debut from a 19-year-old yesterday. Michael Quinn only played 4 games of Aussie rules in his whole life. And here he is, 20 disposals yesterday against the Fremantle Dockers. Amazing stuff, Mick. He did it with Marty Clark. Had a bit more time in the young man than Michael Quinn, but remarkable achievement, wasn't it?
I think the Irish are just incredible. They see the game so well. And when you look at Ty Connelly, Jimmy Steins, these players...
How do they... Is there Gaelic background?
Absolutely. Yeah, it's got to be. The Gaelic football, you've got to see the game, and you must see the game of Gaelic football, because the ball game is so quick, and you've got to be able to find the right targets. And what I enjoy about them, most of all about particularly their kicking, is they make the player work to them. It's not a matter of I put it on top of you two guys and hope that one of you marks it.
You draw a play to it.
He'll kick it to your best spots. You've got to find that best spot. But we're always going to have as I said to Marty last week, I said, you'll fill up another couple of pages in my book, Marty. Incredible stories, Marty and this young guy.
Well, stats are such a huge part of the modern game. Just how are they compiled? Well, this week we went access all areas just to find out.
My job at the footy is a match caller for Champion Data, and what that involves is basically recording and calling every stat that happens from go to woe in a game of footy. 2v block, Cox, kick short, rebound, Thomas Mark play on handball, who gets the ball, how they get the ball, and most importantly what they do with it. Pendlebury hard handball, Wood receives handball, Davis receives handball, Ben Johnson receives handball, Clark block, Pendlebury receives, handball inside, Lockyer receives handball, Clark receives, kick short, goal. Back at the bunker, we've got a keyboarder who inputs the stats into the system, a backup caller who helps me with any passages of play that can get difficult at times, a graphical capture person as well who basically plots on his computer where every disposal is on the ground. Ben Johnson receives, kick clanger smothered by Enright, Rook gather handball, Ablett receives handball, Selwood receives.
Kick short rebound, Wojcicki mark. Kick short to Nathan mark.
We try to keep it as simple as possible so the keyboarders back at the bunker know exactly what's going on and can get the stats in as quickly as possible.
Wood hit out. Ablett loose. Kick short. Goal, that is Ablett, play snap, boundary right, 25.
Because it's not just us who are getting the stats live, it's also the media, and then most importantly, both coaches' boxes are using our stats to basically analyse what's going on.
Darko loose handball, Ablett receives, one bounce, Hawkins block, Ablett kicks short, goal.
In quarter, end game.
That's almost as stressful as an air traffic controller, I reckon. That's how the Dream Team stats are compiled every week. So, Matthew, you're going okay, young man, after 2 rounds. You're ranked number 6 overall. Happy with that?
Yeah, at this stage, but there's a long way to go. I'd rather a couple of wins, though, than Dream Team points.
Fair comment, comment. You want to ask Mick a question about Simon Prestigiacomo?
Yeah, I've always enjoyed playing on Presti. Huge challenge. It must be great to have him back in the side, fit and firing this year.
It is, Matt. I don't know about your terminology of you enjoy playing on him. I'd rather him enjoy playing on you, quite frankly. But
I enjoy the challenge because he's a hard man to beat.
Well, as I said to you off air, if I had known any better, I'd swear he wore that Humphrey Bear suit because 14 years of football, I've had him now for 9 going on to the 10th, and he's a man of not many words, but when he speaks, the boys listen to him. He's a wonderful bloke, and he's a terrific competitor.
Yeah, very underrated defender.
Richard, I've got a question for you. The focus on Ben Cousins at your football club, does that annoy you?
No, because when we got Ben, we knew what was coming. We knew that the media were going to be all over it. And I guess before Christmas it was fairly full on when he first signed up. But since then, really, day to day at the club, the media aren't there following him. I mean...
This is leading into round 1, Mick and Matt. The number of mentions for the media monitors, 161 mentions for Ben. Last week, just the 11. Was it a story about Mick, today's news, tomorrow's fish and chip wrapper?
Absolutely, yeah, if you're prepared to read it.
We're going to take another break. Mick, players with tats, it's a cultural thing now. How's the generation gap in football now? Every year you get a year older, the draftees are a year younger. These kids with tats and the generation gap, how do you deal with it?
They just come in and no one even blinks an eye. I'm the only one that gets staggered. I look in at Dane Swan for a start. I've come in and he's added another bit, a bit more to his arm and a bit more to his foot and this and other bits and pieces of his body, which are under his jumper, thankfully, Richo. And Dane Beams comes in and does the same, and a couple of others have got little ones here, there, and everywhere. And you think, and they don't blink. They just go, oh, that's normal. And I'm the only one that must be thinking as abnormal. But we went through a phase, if you go back to when I was a player, I think there was a few tats prior to that. Then we went through the clean image.
Yes.
No tats, but as you said, earrings and everything else, but never an earring with myself, quarters. And then all of a sudden we've got this stuff. So, but it's good. You know what it is? It's fantastic because you stay young with these blokes. It keeps you young.
Very true.
Too right.
Richo, you've got just a little subtle one?
I've got one, yeah, just on the wrist there. A few years ago. I don't know if I'll be adding to it though.
Maybe if the Tigers get a flag.
I'll definitely put one of them on. It'll be well and truly worth it.
Matthew, thank you very much. A lot of fun. We'll see you throughout the year.
Looking forward
Thank you,
to it.
Mick.
Of course.
May you coach for many years more.
Thank you, mate. Yeah.
We'll see you next year.
Yeah, well, yeah, if the tick is still going and, I haven't got the pension and, got the walking stick out.
Good on you, mate.